Dissatisfied with the theatrical cuts of the original Star Wars films, in 1997, George Lucas went back and made both minor and major changes in order to bring the films closer to what he had originally envisioned when he set out to make them. And while I remember at the time of the special editions release being blown away by the then cutting-edge visual effects editions, since that time I've come to loathe many of them, but must also admit that many more I don't really mind. So let's take a look back at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the special edition changes. First, the good. I remember reading a Rolling Stone interview with Lucas that took place after the release of the original film, and the interviewer was gushing about how dazzling the visual effects were. Lucas, on the other hand, pushed back and told the interviewer that he saw nothing but seams, and that the final result fell very short of what he wanted it to be. And it's apparent now that these perceived flaws in the film would continue to eat away at Lucas for years to come.
The speeder was one of the biggest cringe moments for George. He, every time he saw it and every time he's seen it for the last 20 years, he has just been, oh my God, I wish I'd give anything to be able to fix that.
And fix it he did, along with cleaning up a number of other, what were to him, shoddy visual effects shots that he was never quite happy with. For example, making the airspeeder's cockpit interior opaque instead of translucent, replacing these cardboard cutouts at the end of the first film with actual people, adding eyelids to the Ewoks, removing Anakin's eyebrows, etc., etc. I have no problem with any of these changes, and if nobody told me, I probably wouldn't have even noticed them at all. And there are larger improvements too that I also mostly don't mind. Expanding the scope of Mos Eisley, I think, really helps sell it as a bustling spaceport. However, as is going to become a theme here, I think Lucas went a little overboard.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
This shot of a dewback crossing the frame is just heinous. This opening shot looks like it's from a video game. And this shot with the bumbling droids looks like it would be more at home in The Phantom Menace. The same goes for opening up Cloud City, which I'm mostly in favor of. But, like Mos Eisley, some of these 1997-era CGI shots stick out like a sore thumb in films made in the late 70s and early 80s. I'm also on board with replacing the Emperor with Ian McDiarmid in order to match the continuity of the rest of the films. But if you listen closely, Lucas also changed the dialogue here too. In the new version, Vader is told that Luke is the offspring of Anakin Skywalker, much to Vader's shock and surprise. There also seems to be more of an undertone of both men trying to play each other here, each with their own hidden agendas, which is very Sith-like. So I think overall, this was a welcome change and an improvement. I'm also going to put the expanded victory celebration in the good section simply because I don't hate it, and frankly, I like both versions. I think the original version worked before we got the prequels, but now that we've been introduced to planets like Coruscant and Naboo, it's nice to see them liberated at the end of the film. I also like that they cut out the shot of Luke walking away from the Force ghosts, as he does this weird blink in the original version. I also quite like the new Victory Celebration song too, and I think it's more appropriate for an ending that takes us to many different planets, versus the much more localized Yub Nub song that only seems appropriate if the entire sequence takes place on Endor. That being said, I do miss that final building crescendo to the Yub Nub song right before we hit the credits. To this day, it gives me goosebumps. But what I love most of all about the original ending is how humble and intimate it feels. This is a galaxy-wide celebration, but here we are with our heroes in this small village enjoying a fireside celebration with their new allies, the Ewoks. I always thought that there was something very charming about that. And now for the bad, which, if I had to define, involves changes that are not offensively bad, but ones we could do without. The first is inserting Jabba the Hutt into A New Hope, which is entirely unnecessary, as all of the information and exposition we're told here we already learned in the previous Greedo scene. Further, by not showing Jabba and building him up over the course of 2 movies as a scary and mysterious figure, it made his reveal in Jedi all the more powerful and anticipated. I also find by including this scene, it slows the pacing of the film down too, as by this point I'm eager to leave Mos Eisley and start the adventure. But worst of all is when Solo looks like a cardboard cutout as he steps on Jabba's tail. It's just so bad. Jumping forward to the Sarlac Pit, I see why Lucas added CGI tentacles and a beak to it, as the original version was kind of static.
Somebody misplaced the octopus motor. So when you get in there and fight with him, shake his legs around. It looks like he's killing you. Okay.
But again, the CGI looks dated and out of place. Speaking of dated CGI, I think this is a good time to throw most, if not all of the dated 1997 CGI into the bad category, as none of it fits alongside the model shots, matte paintings, and puppets that make up these films. Frankly, there's something to be said about enjoying the original version of a film, warts and all. Every film is a product of its time, and unfortunately, the irony of updating these films with late 90s visual effects is that now the special editions are basically a product of their time too. If Lucas really wanted to go back and make these films closer to what he originally envisioned, then he should have done so using more practical effects in order to keep the look and feel of these editions consistent with those already in the film. Another thing Lucas has done throughout these movies is changing things to change them. For example, adding this rock in front of R2, changing Kenobi's howl, making this door laughably larger, or adding an excessive amount of stormtroopers to this shot, which just looks like a cut and paste job in Photoshop. Last on our list for bad additions is the Wampa. Like Spielberg did in Jaws, sometimes not showing the monster is scarier than showing it. And to me, the Wampa always looked like a guy in a gorilla suit. I don't think it's awful by any means, but I don't think it's great or a necessary revision that Lucas needed to make. And now time for the ugly, the changes to scenes that are offensively bad. First on the list is Jedi Rocks. I always found the original version of this song kind of odd, yet charming in its shoddiness, and it fit the off-putting vibe of Jabba's palace really well. This new song, however, Han Solo should thank his lucky stars that he's frozen in carbonite so he doesn't have to listen to this. This next one is actually my most hated change. Adding Vader yelling no to the most emotional and climactic moment in the entire trilogy is so laughably bad, it basically ruins the moment for me. And if I had to guess, I would assume Lucas added it because Vader yells no after learning that Padme died too. We get it, it's like poetry, it rhymes. In respect to switching out Sebastian Shaw for Hayden Christensen, this one really bugs me and I'll tell you why. So full disclosure, I am not a fan of the prequels.
I don't like sand.
And seeing prequel elements being forced into the original trilogy really irks me, as I prefer those two things remain separate. However, I appreciate that there is an entire generation of folks that grew up with the prequels.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
And this version of the ending with Hayden is much more impactful to them as it brings the saga full circle. Unfortunately, I am not one of those people, and I always found Hayden and the creepy death stare that he gives here really out of place. Of course, we can't end this video without covering the most egregious change of all, Greedo shooting first. Apart from it looking terrible no matter how many times they try to fix it, by making Greedo shoot first, it completely changes Solo's character and the arc he goes through. While Lucas changed this because he didn't like that Han guns somebody down in cold blood right when we meet him, what Lucas fails to realize is that Han is a morally ambiguous character, just like the rest of the scum and villainy that make up Mos Eisley. He's not supposed to be a good guy, which is further reinforced later in the film when he leaves with his money instead of helping the rebels with the attack on the Death Star. Not only is his heroic return unexpected, but it's the resolution to his character arc as he grows from being a scoundrel and a rogue to a hero, finally putting others before himself. By having Greedo shoot first, however, it undermines Han's entire journey. And then there's the things that Lucas didn't change that leaves me scratching my head, like this shot of Obi-Wan's lightsaber that clearly shows it's a prop, or keeping R2 black and white during the Battle of Yavin. I understand that as an artist, this is how Lucas originally envisioned these films, but for those of us that grew up on the original versions, the special editions really aren't the official versions to us. And as fans, we should be able to go back and watch the versions of these films that we want, whether that's the original or the special editions. The fact that we don't even have a choice is, I think, what upsets people the most. Spielberg has recently come out and said that he regrets replacing guns with walkie-talkies in E.T. He goes on to explain that E.T. is a product of its era, and he should have never messed with the archives of his own work, and he doesn't recommend anyone else do that either. It's my hope that Disney will one day give us the option of watching and enjoying these films the way most of us remember them, but I have a feeling that Lucas probably inserted a clause in the agreement of purchase and sale that stipulated that they can't do that. Let me know in the comments below which changes you can live with and live without. And also don't forget to please subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, everybody.